Okay, let's jump right into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are dropping straight into the final grueling days of the United States Marines training in the summer of 1917. We're going to be looking at the personal letters of a young recruit named Lyle, sent home during weeks 7 and 8 of his boot camp. And let me tell you, what we have here isn't just some dusty historical record. It is a gripping, incredibly universal story about total physical transformation, layered with some of the heaviest emotional tension you can possibly imagine. We are going to unpack his entire journey, from a terrified civilian to a seasoned recruit standing right on the precipice of a world war. Listen to this quote. "The slender boy who walked into this place 8 weeks ago is gone." That is a dramatic, cold-open confession straight from Lyle to his parents. It just perfectly captures the absolute metamorphosis he's undergone. Before we systematically unpack the history and the nitty-gritty of his final weeks, I want you to really keep this image in your mind. This is a young man recognizing that he has been fundamentally dismantled and rebuilt by the military machine.
Section 1. The Final Crucible. So as we transition into the intense realities of Week 7, we really need to establish the baseline of the brutal training Lyle has just survived. He was literally days away from graduation. But, the Marine Corps doesn't exactly let you coast to the finish line. The sheer volume of pressure being applied to these guys was insane. The final assessments weren't just physical. They were deeply, deeply psychological. We're talking wall scaling, rope climbing, and timed runs that tested their absolute physical limits. But then you look at the marksmanship, moving targets and low-light shooting under extreme stress. The instructors specifically wanted to see if these men would completely break when they were exhausted or when conditions were terrible. And the incredible thing here, Lyle passed every single one of them. He actually successfully confirmed the expert marksmanship qualification he'd earned just the week prior.
And that brings us to a really stark contrast. Think about Lyle on day 1. He was naive, scared, completely overwhelmed, and by his own admission, pretty scrawny. He was just totally out of his element. Now, flash forward to Lyle in week 8. He's an expert marksman. He's confident, disciplined, and highly capable. He actually notes in his letters that while he wasn't the absolute fastest guy in his unit, he completed everything well within the required parameters. He fully acknowledges that the Marines have reshaped his slight frame into something enduring. And that physical transformation is really crowned by this one sensory experience: deep blue wool, red trim, and gleaming brass buttons. These are the dress blues the recruits finally received for graduation. Just imagine the symbolic power of that moment for a second. Lyle puts on this iconic uniform, looks in the mirror, and writes that he barely even recognized himself. The boy is gone, and in his place stands a Marine. It's this incredibly triumphant moment, but as we're about to see, that triumph is almost immediately followed by a massive wave of anxiety. Section 2. Diverging Paths of Brotherhood. As boot camp finally wraps up, the atmosphere in the barracks becomes this chaotic, electric mix of excitement, anxiety, and just sheer relief. The looming assignments really illustrate the massive, varied stakes of wartime deployment for Lyle and his brothers-in-arms. You have Lyle, who gets assigned to San Diego administration, and he's burdened by his desire to stick around and help his elderly parents. Then there's his good buddy Keller, heading all the way to Quantico, where he's sick about an injured father back on the family farm. Martinez gets ordered to sea duty on the USS Pennsylvania. He's excited, but he's also terrified because his mother is actually struggling to find housing back home. And Sullivan? He draws security duty in San Diego, feeling this crazy mix of terror and excitement because the shadow of deployment to France is looming over all of them. They survive the crucible together, pushing and supporting one another, but now the military machine is just scattering them to the wind. Section 3. The Burden of Safety. So during his final interview with the famously terrifying Sergeant Davis, Lyle actually requested to use his accounting skills, preferably near San Diego, so he could support his elderly parents. Miraculously, he got exactly what he asked for. But that meant a daily, step-by-step reality of clerical duties: bookkeeping, inventory control, vending coordination, and counter work. I mean, juxtapose that against the dramatic, bloody backdrop of World War I. Lyle is an expert marksman, literally trained for war, but his daily reality is going to be doing paperwork to keep the base running smoothly. He admits to his sweetheart, Emily, that he is deeply, deeply relieved he won't be in immediate danger. But man, that relief is instantly swallowed up by guilt. Which brings us to the crucial point, this heavy question that Lyle poses directly to Emily, and by extension to us. Does choosing safety mean sacrificing honor? He feels like he might be taking the easy way out. He literally asks Emily if she would respect him more if he had been assigned to a combat unit.
It's a profound moral dilemma. He obviously wants to survive the war so he can build a life with her, but he also desperately wants to be a man she can be proud of, a man who proves his bravery. And this translates into an intense internal war for Lyle. On one side, you have administrative safety, calculating pay rates and filing forms. On the other side, infantry sacrifice, his brothers risking their lives in brutal combat in France. Now, the drill instructors assured them that every single job matters, that clerical work is just as essential as infantry operations. But logically knowing his role is important doesn't stop Lyle from feeling like a total coward. He is wrestling with intense survivor's guilt before anyone has even fired a single shot in combat.
Section 4. Anchored by love.
Amidst all of this internal noise, this crushing guilt, and the chaos of his diverging brotherhood, there is one grounding force that just cuts through it all: his profound love for Emily. She connects Lyle to the normal world. When he closes his eyes at night, he isn't dreaming of medals or battlefield glory. He's dreaming of a quiet house, a garden, fruit trees. He's dreaming of building a normal life. He tells Emily that when the administrative work feels totally meaningless, she will be his connection to the life he's fighting to preserve. It's such a beautiful reminder that beneath the crisp uniforms and the rifles, these were incredibly young men fighting for the absolute simplest, most human desires.
And I really want to leave you with this final, incredibly relatable thought from the postscript of his very last letter from boot camp. Quote, "After 8 weeks of being called scrawny and pitiful by drill instructors, I could use a compliment from the woman I love. After all the intense physical training, the existential dread, and a literal global conflict looming right over his head, Lyle just wants to put on his new dress blues, knock on Emily's door, and hear her tell him he looks handsome." It really forces us to ask ourselves, when we are stripped down by hardship and faced with a totally uncertain future, isn't that simple, fundamental human connection what we all ultimately fight for?